her whisper cut through the lace and perfume of that morning like a knife. Let her walk alone. That's all she deserves. I heard it, and worse, I watched my father nod. The bouquet shook in my hands, not from nerves but from disbelief. A wedding aisle that was supposed to be a bridge between me and him, the man who once carried me on his shoulders at the county fair, had just become a punishment walk. A spotlight turned into exile. The music started. Guests rose. My stepmother's lips curved into something that could almost pass as a smile, except I knew it wasn't meant for me. It was victory. And my dad? He stayed seated. He didn't even look at me. Every camera, every eye, every whisper in that church, it pressed against my back as I took the first step. Alone. My gown rustled. My heels echoed louder than the piano. I thought, is this what betrayal sounds like? Not a scream. Not a slap. Just silence when you needed someone's hand the most. I smiled anyway, the kind that breaks your face in half but keeps the tears locked behind your eyes. My groom looked confused, even pained. But no one stopped the ceremony. No one ever does. And in that moment, walking that impossible stretch of carpet with no father beside me, I asked myself, what happens when your family becomes the audience of your humiliation? The answer didn't come that day. That day, I gave the performance they wanted, the lonely bride, the spotlight stealer, the girl who deserved this. But grief doesn't sit quietly forever. Rage doesn't stay buried. Because one day, when the confetti was gone and the vows were old photographs, the story began to turn. The father who let me walk alone would soon learn what it meant to be left standing, begging for forgiveness in a world where silence was no longer mine to carry. After the wedding, people said things they thought were comforting. At least you looked strong. You'll laugh about this one day. But the truth? Every replay in my head felt like salt poured onto an open wound. My father didn't just abandon me at the altar steps, he validated her whisper. My stepmother, with her practiced grace, her daughter beaming in pastel, bridesmaid silk, had choreographed the scene perfectly. I was the villain in their play, stealing a spotlight I never asked for. And he, the man who once promised, "I'll always protect you," chose their script over me. At the reception, he toasted like nothing had happened. Champagne glass raised, voice steady, eyes never once meeting mine. My husband squeezed my hand under the table, but it didn't stop the burn in my chest. I remember staring at the cake, flawless white tears with sugared roses, and feeling like I was watching my life split in layers. Sweet on the outside, hollow within. When I hugged guests goodbye, their eyes said it all. Pity, confusion, some even disgust, though I couldn't tell if it was for him or me. My stepmother's daughter leaned in, smirk painted across her lips, and whispered, "Guess you finally learned your place." That night, still in my gown, I sat on the bathroom floor of the hotel suite, mascara streaks staining my face, asking the same question over and over. What makes a daughter unworthy of a father's hand? I didn't have the answer, but I knew this much. Forgiveness was never going to be handed out like confetti. And somewhere deep in me, beneath the ache and shame, something else was born that night. A kind of clarity, a vow louder than any I had spoken at the altar. That one day, the same man who left me to walk alone would look me in the eyes again, not as his daughter, not as his burden, but as the mirror to his failure. And when that day came, it would be his turn to walk alone. The months after the wedding were a blur of silence. Not from me, from him. My father didn't call. Not once. No, how are you adjusting? No, I'm proud of you. He let the humiliation hang in the air like an unspoken rule. You don't bring it up and I don't regret it. But silence has a way of sharpening. It turns memories into mirrors. And every time I looked at one, I saw the empty aisle, his still shoulders, the way he couldn't even meet my eyes. My husband tried to fill the space, bless him. He'd make me tea, bring flowers home, joke about our little apartment kingdom. But even he knew, some betrayals don't leave room for quick fixes. They rot quietly. Then came the invitations, family gatherings, holiday dinners, birthdays. Each card bore her handwriting, my stepmother's, each one a reminder that my absence was being noted, that my name was written only because appearance demanded it. I never went, not once, but that didn't stop me from watching. Social media is cruel that way. Photos of my stepmother's daughter laughing with my dad, her arm hooked in his, her birthday cake topped with sparklers, his smile wider than I remembered. He hadn't just replaced me on the aisle, he had replaced me in his life. And yet time is patient. One evening, nearly a year later, I got a call. My stepmother's daughter, the golden child, had been caught in a scandal. Something with money, a job gone wrong, whispers of fraud. And suddenly, the carefully painted picture of their perfect family started to crack. Guess who reached out first? My father. The man who left me to walk alone now dialed my number like a penitent child, his voice breaking before he even said hello. He didn't apologize. Not then. He asked for something worse. Can you help? I remember holding the phone, staring at the screen, my breath steady. All I thought was, funny, when I needed a hand, you gave me silence. Now you want mine to pull you out of the fire? And in that moment, a seed of justice sprouted. Quiet, patient, ready. I didn't answer that call. Not the first one. Not the second. Not even the fifth. By the 10th, curiosity outweighed my silence. I let it ring long enough that he'd panic, then slid my thumb across the screen. Hello. My voice was ice. Sweetheart, he broke immediately, the kind of sob that once would have undone me. It's bad. I don't know who else to turn to. I said nothing. Let him sweat in the silence he'd taught me. He stumbled through the story. His wife's daughter had lost her job. Legal trouble was circling. And worse, money was gone. Savings drained. Investments crumbled. The picture-perfect life they flaunted online was rotting underneath. Finally, he whispered the words I knew were coming. I need your help. It's strange, isn't it? How the same mouth that once refused to say, I'm proud of you, suddenly had no shame asking for rescue. I leaned back in my chair, tracing the rim of my coffee cup, letting the bitterness coat my tongue. I could have said no. I could have hung up. But revenge, real revenge, isn't a slammed door. It's a slowly closing one, soft enough that they still hope they'll squeeze through. So I said, I'll think about it. That single thread of hope was all he needed. And I knew exactly what I was doing, letting him dangle. Because every unanswered text, every call I ignored after that was a mirror, a reminder. The daughter who once needed his hand was now the one holding the rope. At night, lying awake, I replayed my wedding aisle over and over. Except now the vision shifted. Instead of me walking alone, it was him. My father, in a crowd full of faces, searching desperately for someone, anyone to walk beside him. And no one moved. That's when I realized I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight. All I had to do was become the silence he gave me, and watch how it swallowed him whole. Desperation has a smell. I swear I could sense it every time his number flashed across my screen. At first, it was phone calls, then texts, then emails, messages piling up like unpaid bills, each one more frantic than the last. Please call me. We're drowning. You're the only one who can fix this. The irony made me laugh, quietly, bitterly. The man who left me to walk alone now couldn't take a step without begging me to guide him. But I didn't answer. Not directly. I let silence be my reply. And yet, I began to craft something deeper. You see, revenge isn't just about pain. It's about truth. It's about taking the stage they once stripped from you and turning the lights so bright that every lie is exposed. So I waited until Thanksgiving. The invitations came again like they always did. This time I accepted. My husband raised an eyebrow. He knew I hadn't set foot in that house since the wedding, but I told him softly, some things need to be witnessed. Walking into that dining room was like stepping into a theater. My stepmother, stiff in her pearls, her daughter, pale and hollow-eyed from scandal, and my father, aged, thinner, lines carved into his face that hadn't been there before. He looked at me like a man crawling through sand toward water. Dinner began. Small talk floated, knives scraped china, and then, like clockwork, he broke. Voice cracking, fork trembling. Please, I need your forgiveness. I need your help. The room went silent. Every eye turned toward me. I smiled, not cruel, not soft, just enough to let the weight of the moment hang heavy. And I said, clear enough for everyone to hear. Funny, on the day I needed you most, you stayed seated. You let me walk alone. And now you want me to hold your hand. The air shattered. My stepmother stiffened, her daughter dropped her gaze, and my father, he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. It wasn't rage that filled me. It was something better. Justice, steady and calm, unfolding in front of an audience that once pitied me. For the first time, I didn't feel alone at all. The silence at that table was heavier than the turkey, thicker than the gravy. No one knew where to look. My stepmother's fork clinked against her plate as she tried to act unfazed, but her daughter's eyes glistened with shame. And my father? He looked like a man drowning in the very silence he once left me to choke in. I didn't fill the gap with noise. I let the truth linger. That's the thing about justice. It doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be undeniable. When I finally spoke again, my voice was calm. Almost too calm. You built a family where I was always the outsider. You let her whisper poison in your ear until you believed it was truth. And when I needed you most, you didn't just look away, you sat down. My father's lip trembled. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please let me make it right. But there is no aisle you can rewalk. No hand you can offer after the music has already ended. I leaned back, meeting the eyes of everyone at the table, making sure the words weren't just his to carry. I don't need you to make it right. I just need you to remember that day every time you look at me. My husband reached under the table and squeezed my hand, this time not to comfort me, but to steady the power in my words. Then I did something that shifted the balance completely. I stood, took my glass, and raised it. To walking alone, I said, because sometimes it's the only way to learn how strong you really are. Gasps. Awkward shifting. A few guests clinked their glasses, hesitant, but the point had already landed. I had turned the humiliation of my wedding into a toast, a story, a weapon. My father buried his face in his hands. My stepmother fidgeted with her pearls. Her daughter couldn't even lift her head. And me? For the first time since that long, lonely aisle, I felt taller. This wasn't just my revenge. This was my reclamation. The toast didn't end at that table. Word spread, like it always does in families that thrive on whispers. By the weekend, I was getting messages from cousins, aunts, even old neighbors. Is it true? He really didn't walk you down the aisle. And for once, I didn't hide it. I confirmed it. Calmly, truthfully, without venom, because sometimes the clean retelling of betrayal is sharper than any exaggeration. It wasn't long before the story left the walls of our family. Photos surfaced, me alone in my gown, bouquet trembling, my father seated with his wife at his side. Screenshots of my toast circulated, too. And suddenly, the man who once commanded respect at every gathering became a punchline. At the grocery store, people didn't say hello, they whispered. At church, heads shook as he walked by. Even colleagues began to look at him differently. Reputation, once pristine, was unraveling thread by thread. And here's the twist. I didn't have to do a thing. I didn't scream. I didn't post rants. I just allowed the truth to exist in the light. When my father called again, his voice was smaller than I'd ever heard. I made a mistake. I should have been there. I should have walked you. For a flicker of a second, my chest tightened. The little girl in me wanted to believe him, to imagine a father who meant those words. but the woman I had become knew better. Words don't rewrite aisles. Apologies don't erase humiliation. So I answered with the only truth I had left. You chose her whisper over my hand. That's a choice you'll live with forever. He cried. I didn't. And as I hung up, I realized something I'd never admitted before. Revenge wasn't about making him hurt. It was about making sure I never walked alone again. And that power was mine to keep. The last time I saw him, it wasn't at a wedding or a holiday or around a crowded table. It was in a quiet cafe on the edge of town. He had asked me to meet, said he needed to see me. Against my better judgment, I went. When I walked in, he looked older than I remembered. Shoulders hunched, eyes sunken. Time had done what I couldn't, made him carry the weight of his choices. He stood when he saw me. For a moment, he almost reached for me the way a father should. But then he stopped, as if even he knew the gesture no longer belonged to him. We sat. He fumbled with his cup. His hands shook. I was wrong, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I let her words poison me. I failed you, and every day since your wedding, I've thought about it. Please forgive me. I studied him, this man who had once been my shield, who had chosen silence when I needed his voice. And I realized I didn't hate him anymore. Hatred requires energy, and I had already walked too far from that aisle to carry him with me. So I said the truth, plain and steady. I don't need your forgiveness, and you can't have mine. You left me to walk alone, and I did. I learned how strong I am because you weren't there. That strength, it's mine, not yours. He cried openly, shoulders shaking in a room full of strangers. People looked. Some pitied him. None pitied me. I stood, gathered my bag, and placed money on the table for my coffee. He reached out, a reflex maybe or a final plea. But I stepped back, just far enough. Dad, I said, quietly, you'll spend the rest of your life begging for a moment you'll never get back. And that is your aisle now, one you'll always walk alone. I turned, walked out. The door chimed shut behind me. And this time, I didn't feel abandoned. This time, the silence was mine. This time, I wasn't the one left begging.